Martina, please, to give us your speech, and the title is My Hometown. Thank you very much.
Madam Toastmaster, Mr. President, fellow members and guests. Tonight I would like to talk to you all about my hometown, Portlaoise, or Maryborough as it was known many years ago. I've just brought with me a map of Ireland for those of you who are not from Portlaoise, just outlining where Portlaoise is, and a general map of Portlaoise. A little bit of background about Portlaoise. Almost 500 years ago, English settlers established a fort in Portlaoise, which was around Fitzmaurice Place, where the old convent was. It was named Maryborough in honour of the Queen Mary, and it was only after the War of Independence in 1921 the whole county was renamed Laois, at which time the town adopted the name Portlaoise. As many of you know, Portlaoise is the capital town in Laois, which is the only county in Ireland touching a county that doesn't touch the sea. Odlum's Mills was one of the first industries in Portlaoise, and I'll show you a picture of it, which it was established in 1845 here in Portlaoise. And the Odlum family opened their first flour mill in Portlaoise, and they're now nationwide. Then almost a century later, during the 40s, 50s and 60s, the main employers in town were the Worston Mills, ESB and Portlaoise Prison. The 1970s saw industry awaken in Portlaoise with the arrivals of some factories, one being Treetorn, which manufactured tennis balls. Leicester Square was developed in 1980, and the first shopping centre in Portlaoise, Laois Shopping Centre, opened its doors in 1991, 21 years ago. In the late 90s and in the early 2000s, Portlaoise became one of the most popular towns in Ireland for commuters. Mainly people who travelled from Dublin or to and from Dublin, and a lot of people moved from Dublin to stay in Portlaoise because there was such good transport from Portlaoise to Dublin, and it was that little bit cheaper, I suppose, to buy a house here. And at the same time, we had a lot of immigrants, mainly from Eastern Europe. This in turn led to a big demand for houses and sites in or around Portlaoise, and of course crazy prices being asked for them. In fact, an average price for a house of just a 3-bedroom semi-detached house was almost €250,000. The boom years brought with it some great projects in Portlaoise. The Donamaise Art Centre, which I've just shown here, which is established in the old courthouse in Portlaoise, started up in 1999. And it comprises a 240-seat theatre, an exhibition gallery and a restaurant. We in Portlaoise are very fortunate to have such a great facility right at our doorstep, and it offers great access for both amateurs as well as professional performances. Portlaoise Parish Centre opened in 2005 and acts as headquarters for the parish, housing the parish centre as well as providing meeting places and other activities. It has become an integral, maybe even essential part of the social infrastructure of the Portlaoise community. History was made in 2007 in Portlaoise when the first black mayor in Ireland was elected, Rotimi Adebari. Having arrived in Ireland from Nigeria in the year 2000, he was elected town councillor in 2004 and has won many awards for his work in the area of multiculturalism. Then, in 2008, the recession hit Portlaoise with a bang. Ghost estates, together with many vacant shop fronts, were becoming more and more common. In 1 year alone, house prices dropped by 17% in Portlaoise and unemployment soared, and queues outside the social welfare office became the norm. However, despite all the doom and gloom, there were many positive developments which continued in Portlaoise. Portlaoise Leisure Centre was built in 2006, as well as Portlaoise College, and then this was followed by 2 new secondary schools in Portlaoise, which were completed in 2010, Skullcreastery and CBS. In that same year, Educate Together, our first non-denominational primary school, opened its doors in the old technical school. In 2011, the population of Laois hit 80,000, with Portlaoise of just over 20,000, and that was an increase of 38% from the 2006 census. Through all the ups and downs, it must be said there's a great community spirit in Portlaoise, and we have many charities that are supported throughout the town. For example, St Vincent de Paul, Sue Ryder, Portlaoise Lions Club, as well as many other groups who support the underprivileged. In addition to that, we also have some great support groups for businesses in town. We have Laois Chamber of Commerce, we have Downtown Portlaoise, we have BNI. Laois Chamber of Commerce represents businesses of all sizes and types in Portlaoise and in the Laois area, while Downtown Portlaoise represents business in the main street. This is where the town originated, and it continues to evolve today. We even had our own Christmas market in Portlaoise this year, last Sunday week, and despite the weather, it proved to be a great success. There are many things to do in Portlaoise, and many groups to join for everybody of all ages. We have great GAA clubs, soccer clubs, Portlaoise for teenagers, Toastmasters for all ages, the active retirement group for over 55s, pantomime and musical groups, to name but a few. I would like to also take this opportunity to just tell you about the Gathering Ireland 2013, which is a tourist initiative launched by the Taoiseach and is being supported by Fáilte Ireland and Tourism Ireland, and is aimed at being a celebration of all things Irish. I would encourage all of you here tonight to showcase and to share the very best in our community here in Portlaoise, and to reach out to those who have moved away from Portlaoise and invite them home in 2013. It's a great opportunity to do what we do best here in the Midlands, be welcoming and proud of our town and our heritage, and show the rest of the world that even though times are hard, we in Portlaoise are still a strong and welcoming town, and will continue to do what it takes to make this a great place to live and to visit. And I'll just conclude tonight with one message for you, and this is from the Downtown Portlaoise, and I thought it was very apt for this time of year and just in connection with Portlaoise. This Christmas, we should all pledge to shop small, spend local, eat local, and enjoy local. Thank you.